All right. And I also have my lovely colleague Shivika here with me, who's done a lot of heavy lifting on this report. So we'll do this together. Okay, perfect. So I think you've been listening to these amazing conversations during the course of the day. And Anthony, thank you so much for that one line from human beings and human doings. I love that statement. I'm definitely going to take it as my personal mantra. So much to learn from everybody in this forum. Okay, let's talk a little bit about this particular report, right? Um, let's talk about health check. How many of us have done our annual health check already? We are in December. Very, very shy, 20%, 30%. Bold, yes. I mean, I can't raise my hand. I haven't, I'm guilty. Yeah. So health check is something that all of us know is important. And we do believe that every day we are doing something which is contributing to our good health. There are days when we say no to something which is very tempting. Oh, I didn't have that chocolate pastry. I didn't have that extra drink. Today I slept early. Today I got up and meditated. I took a morning walk. We do these things during the course of the year, right? And we then explain to ourselves that it's all right. We tried. Yes? No? Yeah? We know it's important. We think we are doing a little bit about it. Maybe that's the best we can do. We run very busy lives. I'm a parent, I'm a corporate employee, I'm so many things, right? But it is extremely important. There's a reason why organizations say that you need to have an annual health check. And I must absolutely thank Team Marksman for envisioning the need for this kind of a health check on DEI, right? So the whole concept of the DEI index is that yes, we are all trying, we all have probably evolved, we understand the importance of it, we understand that, we are trying, we are learning, somebody's got a policy right, somebody's got a process right, somebody's got recruitment right, and these are all great, right? But net, what does that health check look like? And that's really the voice of truth that this report is supposed to bring out. Okay, so that's a little bit on the context. Now, we'll quickly get into some details which might be of interest to all of you. So clearly the purpose, and I know a lot of you here have filled in the survey, you've been participants, some of you have been acknowledged for the great work that you've done. So the survey's purpose is to really create that national DEI index. And as Rishi and team mentioned in the morning, it's really the first of its kind. And I'm 100% sure that with every passing year, the brand will only get stronger. And in a way, I can say that this is like the first batch which is creating that wave of change by moving to a very structured thought process around it. Right? We talk about the importance of representation. Similarly, I would say this is a group which is representing the voice and the flow of DEI that we want to have. We started with a beautiful thought in the morning that we would love to see a time where we don't need to have a conference specifically on DEI because it would be so part and parcel of every organization's DNA, right? So with that kind of a vision, it's important to make sure that we are checking how well we are doing on that journey. So we want to look at what are the national best practices, what are some of the systemic gaps, and how can we formalize DE strategies to drive real business value. No doubt about the fact that since morning we've been talking about it, that this is not a nice to do, this is not warm and fuzzy, this is not about the HR function, it is really about creating business value. Okay? All right, let's just move forward. Quick view on the methodology. I think we'll go quickly on the methodology. I'm sure you are more interested in the results, but I will just also quickly walk you all through the methodology so that you know it is pretty robust, right? So there's a whole survey design and framework, a lot of deliberation. We did toy with this classic idea to say, should we include everything about everything? Have lots of questions on PWD, on neurodiversity, on, LGBTQI, on gender, and just cover the whole world. But naturally, that's not practical. So how is it that we look at DEI overall and double click in a few areas? We also have a vision that maybe down the line, a few years down the line, you could do a DEI index which is specific to LGBTQI and say how good our organization practices in that area. What do we need to do better? Where is it that we can be the voice of industry, the voice that goes to, policy making? Why not? Okay. So the survey design and framework, followed by the whole rollout where people were invited, organizations were invited. There was a rigorous process of data collection and consolidation. I must say, as a consultant, I must say that in many cases, we got responses which were half-hearted. I mean, maybe not half-hearted, but not fully filled, right? And that could be because of a couple of reasons. Maybe we really do not have information on data in certain sections. We've never thought about it. We've never collected that data. So again, that's a point of pause and reflection. If we don't even know, then how are we going to do something about it, right? So in many instances, we did go back to organizations, seek additional data, had conversations where required so that we are able to fill some of those things in. Followed then by, the whole evaluation and insights, etc. Of course, we did rollout, scoring and benchmarking, etc. Right? So that's the process that we followed. Quick view on the participation. The biggest representation was from technology and information services, ITS organizations. 24% of our responses came from that segment. About 17% came from manufacturing, which I think is extremely heartening. And today morning, we discussed so much at length about how DEI can really make a difference to that sector. And that sector has had a lot of underrepresented roles when it comes to any cut of DEI. But if you heard the CEOs, if you heard the CHROs and the thought leaders, there are great strides that are being made by many organizations. So it's a lot to take inspiration from. About 11% banking and financial services, and you see that there's a fairly diverse representation from an industry perspective. Okay? Again, if you were to look at it from an employee size, if you were to look at it from organizational tenure, maybe you can do one more click. For me, what was interesting here is that while we have 35% of our respondents in the 1,000 to 5,000 employee category, it is followed by 19% representation with less than 500. Right? So the biggest and the smallest organizations seem to have been most enthusiastic in terms of their participation. Okay, let's move forward. Let's look at the overall findings. So I'll first talk to you all about the framework, and then we will move forward from there. Okay, what you heard earlier today, I'm just sort of backing it with data. So we did say that we have a bulging middle, which is good, which means that a lot of things are in flight, a lot of initiatives are in progress, where about 51.3% of organizations, they are progressing with purpose. They're not quite there, but they're making really structured attempts, maybe not in every sphere of DEI, but in significant areas. We have about 35% organizations which are still in very early stages. Okay, and it's not necessary that if it's a great brand, it has a great DEI maturity. We all know that there's a lot more that needs to be done by many organizations. So that 35%, with every passing year, we should think about our own KPI to say, what can each one of us do to influence and move more and more organizations from category 1 to category 2? And of course, we want organizations to then move to category 3, which is about 13% of organizations who came across as fairly strong in the way they are running inclusive practices, right? And again, as a consultant, when we look at something like this, we say, is it institutionalized? It's not about that one great CHRO or that one visionary CEO who did all these right things. But after doing those right things, were they able to embed it in the organization wherein it became the part and parcel of organizational language? Yeah. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the framework. So the framework of evaluation has 7 key dimensions. The first is strategic planning. Okay, we always start from the top. We say, is DEI connected to the business metric? Is it connected to long-term value creation? Right? So is that commitment embedded in the vision and in the strategic goals? We don't want it to be an L5 level initiative. Okay. Governance and operations. So that strategy has to then translate into structure, policies, and leadership accountability. Otherwise, it's great to write something on your website and forget about it. So, is that intent translating into structure, process, policy? Followed by how are we communicating, both internally and externally? Because our internal talent pool needs to feel that DEI is part of my DNA, as well as my potential employee pool and my community in general needs to look at my organization as something which is, worth associating with. Talent practices, which is, really going into the entire hire to retire employee life cycle for equitable outcomes. Culture and well-being, which is really about the everyday behaviors, right? Culture is nothing but everyday behaviors. So what kind of everyday behaviors are experienced in the workplace? Is there psychological safety? Is there accessibility? Is there focus on holistic well-being? Again, if you see, those of you who've been here since morning, each of these topics have been discussed in the different panels. So I'm sure there are a lot of thoughts around it. Value chain diversity. An organization's never sitting in the ecosystem just by itself. So we have a duty to the community. And when I say community, it's about just forward and backward integration. If I was to just go and say DEI commitment to the entire external ecosystem, my suppliers, my partners, my contract workers. Today we are talking about different kinds of employment models, different kinds of workforce. Are we really extending our DEI in letter and spirit to them? Or is it that, okay, if you're a contractor, I don't care, you just come, work, and go. To my full-time employees, I'm going to do all these nice things, right? So that happens. And then metrics. We talked about what gets measured, gets managed. Of course, measuring is important, not because we want to tick box a number, but because we want to know how we are doing, right? Okay, now let's quickly look at some of the results. So when it comes to strategic planning, and we've got a set of questions, etc., that we've put here as well. But when it comes to strategic planning, 41% of the organizations are yet to integrate DEI principles in their vision, mission, value statements. Right? It's not starting from the top. It is not really articulated so. 70% of the organizations have less than 25% women in leadership positions, right? We know that DEI spans much beyond gender. And I know that probably gender is what we all started looking at when we started the DEI journey, whether it was 10 years, 20 years, 30 years back, but we still have a long way to go, right? So it's not done and dusted. We can't say, okay, this is sorted, let's move to the next one. 75% of organizations are yet to recognize neurodivergence as a part of DEI dimensions. And it's very important. Again, see, neurodivergence in itself is a very broad term, right? There are organizations that have done very well with people with autism and they've got like great stuff going for them. Similarly, they've sort of picked up things that they can work with, at least make a start, and then go deeper into the chain. But those are far and few. Okay, let's go to the next one, which is governance and operations. Now, when it comes to governance and operations, which is around compliance, around policies, around leaderships, and then around budget. Again, one of the panel members made a great statement saying that, you could be a psychological sponsor, but who's the financial sponsor, right? So again, I'm sort of making a link there. 56% of the organizations are yet to constitute a formal DEI council. Now, while there are policies and there are mandates from a government or a legal perspective on certain aspects around complaints committee, around POSH, etc., but a DEI council is so much more. It is progressive, it is inclusive, it is forward-looking. And, the trick is into saying it's not about doing what is legally mandated, but doing what is constructive for the organization. So I think a lot of work that still needs to be done here. And 44% of the organizations do not really look at a DEI budget. So I may have a training budget, I will include one inclusion program in it. That's not a DEI budget, right? I can say, yes, I'm spending on DEI. I have got all my leaders trained on unconscious bias. I got them all into a room. I had a facilitator. He showed some slides. We are done. But we know in this room that it's a lot more than that. So again, going deeper into it, and mind you, this is really coming from organizations that have participated in the survey, which is just a small portion of the entire ecosystem, right? So there's still a lot of work to be done. Let's go to the next one, which is around communication. Now, interestingly, while we have seen organizations starting to focus on internal narrative and internal communication, which is a positive trend, right? They're conscious of how they internally communicate a bit more inclusively. I'd say we are more than 50%. Okay, it's at least on the right side of the curve. But when you look at external communication, it is still fairly underpenetrated. We are not making an emphatic statement of what we want to do and be when it comes to DEI. Could be that we don't want to be held accountable for it tomorrow, saying, oh, you've got this on your site, how can you not do it in practice? Could be that it just didn't occur to me that it was important. Could be that somebody, oh, my marketing and branding team did not come up with those words, so I did not really think about it. I mean, I'm not judging, right? But it could be any of these factors. The fact remains that external communication is much lesser than desired, right? On a stand that we want to take as an organization. Moving to talent practices, and again, we've deep dived on this topic quite a lot. 38% of organizations do not perform pay equity audits. I'm happy to see that the larger number of them say that they do. Now, just because they do a pay audit does not mean that there is pay equity, but at least it's a start, right? In fact, I was reading another very important statistic, which is to say that gender representation has significantly gone up because of the ITS industry, especially the GCCs, the captives, where there are a lot of women leaders coming into the workforce. But in that very segment of industry, there is a very stark pay disparity between men and women. So while the metric on representation has gone up, the inclusion in terms of pay parity is yet to happen. Okay. 68% of organizations do not provide LGBTQ and PWD inclusive benefits. You heard a lot of panel members talking about certain very progressive benefits, and whether it's in terms of leave or insurance or loans or few other instruments, but again, far lesser than what is desired for the community to really feel included. Culture well-being. Now, cultural well-being is where I think we're doing slightly better than many of the other metrics. So 83% of organizations, they clearly have an anti-harassment policy. We are seeing a lot of employees use these channels constructively. And, we were also talking about generation during the course of the day. We do see a lot of women, we do see a lot of younger population utilizing these channels very well. Okay. Now, even if you have, say, 10%, 20%, 25% of these cases not being the right cases, we do have sometimes people over-projecting bias or over-projecting a negative conversation, mixing performance with a bias conversation, etc. But still, there is, the merits far outweigh the demerits of having it. More than 50% of organizations do not have adequately accessible physical and digital infrastructure to support employees with disabilities. I think the previous panel was talking a little bit about it. I would say this whole piece around digital infrastructure is a very important one. On one hand, we are talking about this whole AI, Gen AI, progress, innovation, etc. On the other hand, we are not even utilizing the full potential of technology to make inclusion happen. I mean, I may have a vision to say I want to get neurodiverse talent, I want to get PWD talent, but do I have the tools and technologies which will make them productive? Because if you hire them and you just let them just hang around, that's not right. It's actually an injustice. So you got to make sure that you're being given the tools. So suppose I'm hired in an organization, I'm not given a laptop, I'm not given access, and I'm told, why is your performance so poor in comparison to Shivika, because she was given all the tools. I would say that's simply unfair. I don't have access, I don't have a laptop, I don't have this, I don't have that. But that's exactly what we are doing when we are getting into PWD and certain other segments, where we are assuming that what we already have as an organization may be just a ramp more, and that's it. But it's not. Okay? Now, coming to value chain diversity, an interesting one. Many organizations, and you would see this, all of you who interact with global stakeholders and organizations across the globe, you would see in large RFPs, there's a whole section on this. Any of you have that experience? Yeah? You see your global officers doing it, or if you're responding to large RFPs, there's a whole section where you're supposed to prove that you're really an organization that's doing well on ESG, that you've got the right kind of green footprint, you've got the right kind of DEI, you're making sure that you're not violating any laws. And in fact, again, I'm going back into saying as a consultant, there have been so many instances where there's a very big pitch, we are going to make a deal, there are 10 partners in a room, there's no women partner, or there's one. I'm like standing with 10 other men suited in black ties and coats. And EY is fairly good when it comes to their diversity ratio in senior levels. So even there, when I see this kind of a thing, you can imagine. And there have been clients who have said, I don't see your partner group as diverse enough. Are you sure you're going to be able to bring all the perspectives I need? Right? And I really applaud such clients because they push change. So going back into saying that supplier diversity, also looking at opportunities for suppliers from marginalized communities. There are organizations who say that at least 51% ownership is by minority communities, by women, by people from rural background, low income groups, then these kind of contracts or opportunities I'm going to keep only for that segment. That's not about compromising on meritocracy, but it's about equity. Right? Again, contract workers, this is a very interesting topic because when we have other forums, we often talk about how different kinds of employment models are creating so much of flexibility and value for organizations. And the fact that it is really a win-win. Employees want flexibility, organizations want flexibility, but are we extending our DEI thinking even to cover contract workers? And then lastly, coming to metrics. Good thing is 60% of organizations are tracking some or the other form of a DEI metric. Again, I think this is a good data point, something for us to feel good about. Now, we can always debate saying how mature are these DEI metrics? Is it just about the number of women entering the workforce in the junior level? Is it just about ratios without looking at whether these are core or support roles? Is it about senior management representation? Is it including all forms of DEI? But I'd say we'll get there. The good thing is at least we are starting to measure. But 67% of organizations do not publicly disclose their DEI report. How many of you are familiar with this concept of integrated reporting? Yeah? So as an organization, you can actually include ESG and DEI components, publish it, include it into your annual report. You can go and talk about how HR is complying with it, how finance is doing it, how supply chain. You can actually go function-wise, look at various elements of E, S, and G and publish it. I mean, it's a great vote of confidence to your stakeholders. It's not about looking great and doing all things right, but it's about the confidence and courage you have as an organization to go out there and make that statement. We are doing these things, we are working on these things, and we keep showing progress. Okay, now with that, maybe just a very quick summary. So communication and cultural well-being are relatively more mature as factors, followed by governance and operations and strategic planning and talent practices, where there are some organizations who are doing all right, a lot more that needs to be done. And metrics and value chain diversity are fairly raw, even for organizations that have overall done well. Okay? All right? I think industry cut is fairly clear. We'll just go to the next one. Now, again, a very interesting representation. If you look at the bottom 5% organizations and the top 5% organizations, The difference is in the extremities. The score that the bottom 5% organizations have got out of 100 on some of these factors is 2, 8, 14. And the similar factors, the score for the top 5% organizations is like a 76.5, 86, 92, 92, etc. Which means that there is so much gap between the top 5 and bottom 5%. Yeah? Again, go back to the concept of health check. It's not about judgment. It's about reflection. It's about saying, all right, I'm at a 2. Now, how do I get to a 20? How do I get to a 40? And so on. I think a lot of people here in the room are also looking for ways in which we can influence our organizations to move in the direction that we know to be right. And I think some of these are great tools, saying, it's not me saying it. Look at, how things are and what do we want to do about it. So again, just quickly summarizing, just click once. So if we were to look at the subcomponents within each of these 7 factors, dedicated DEI budget, contract workforce equity, supplier diversity, supplier contract, external communication, and transparency and workforce composition. These are areas where organizations have performed more poorly in comparison to the others. So clearly, these are more like industry-specific or ecosystem-specific metrics, which all of us need to do a lot better on. Okay, wow, we have only 5 minutes. I thought I was looking at the time. So I'm going to request my colleague Shivika to just talk to you a little bit about some of the Spotlight series, some of the marquee practices, some of the good organizations. I know some of these case studies were already discussed, but maybe we'll throw a little bit more light into some of them.
Hi, hope I'm audible to all of you. So I'm just going to go through and recognize some of the efforts by some organizations that were part of this survey that we conducted. This is not to discredit other organizations who've also done and taken significant strides in the DEI process, but just recognizing some of the key organizations who took part in this. So we also had somebody, a representative from Wipro, who also shed light on some of these practices. So for example, their Ombuds program is a very confidential channel where everybody, all employees are free to share any kind of grievances, challenges that they're facing internally in the organization confidentially, which makes it a very safe environment for them to be able to share their challenges. As Alpana also mentioned, value chain diversity was an angle which is not really targeted and focused upon by a lot of organizations, where we see Wipro taking significant strides in making it as inclusive as possible by attracting a lot of different kinds of vendors and also providing mentorship opportunities to them. So as you can see, they've achieved a significant spend on these practices to make sure that all kinds of suppliers are integrated into their systems. Allyship badge, which we also spoke about a lot, encouraging employees internally to be able to also, look at other kinds of people around them and also make it as inclusive as possible internally. We also had Godrej Properties speak up about some of these practices where they talked about Disable Me, Pride internships, which is their way of sharing a lot of internships for these marginalized groups. And that is a very interesting practice that we observed from the survey that we conducted. Walk the talk, which was very interesting to me. And we had a very interesting, we also debated about this a bit, where leaders actually step into the shoes of, disabled or PWD categories of employees, and they actually try to see and navigate their infrastructure through their lens to understand what can be done better to make it as inclusive for them as possible. And we also discussed how it is all about providing equitable opportunities for all of us. So that's a very good stride, which I think with leaders, sort of take the first steps and encourage employees to also do the same. The DEI lab that Godrej has set up, which is very talked about in the industry as well, where it's a very inclusive way of other different kinds of employees coming together and debating and deliberating about what they can do to make the no knowledge exchange happen to make practices better in their systems. Teleperformance, this is also another industry that we wanted to cover, where they've taken strides in making maternity leaves as extensive as possible, so that it's not just about providing the basic kinds of, as government mandates, but also providing them additional support in returning back to work. Also, recognizing the achievements of women and powerful women ambassadors in the organization, which is always a good step to encourage employees to further do the same. We also had Eaton, representative in the panel as well, where they've taken significant strides in, despite being a manufacturing organization, they've taken strides in making sure that women leadership is well recognized at the top. There are a lot of women representation across their employee headcount. They also, again, have a very integrated line of grievance reporting system, and also collaborate with external partners to ensure that there are more women included into their systems from different STEM fields. Lastly, we have one representation from the fintech industry as well, where Angel One has organized an unpause program, which is basically to encourage women returning back to work from career breaks, which is also very interesting. There's also a centralized DEI dashboard, where apart from representation of the gender, LGBTQ, PWD categories, they also track representation of career returnees, HEGs, or historically excluded groups. Lastly, there's Angel Care Plus, where their health benefits do not just include the regular benefits, they also include surrogacy leaves, same-sex partner benefits, and gender-neutral washrooms. So these were a culmination of some of the interesting practices we observed. This is, as I said, there are many other practices that we came across, and we just wanted to recognize a few of them. But this was a very interesting study for us to understand what kind of different practices each organization is taking in their own way to ensure that there's some representation from diverse groups, and also an effort to make opportunities as inclusive and equitable as possible. Alpana, I'll hand it over back to you.
Yeah.
To take forward from here.
Thank you, Shivika. So that's just a very quick, overview. Yeah, I think we can just click on. So when every voice counts, business outcomes multiply. I mean, we could just do so many statements, but I think the essence, I hope, is communicated. I hope you all got a good glimpse of what this whole index is. The vision for the index is really important. And to that extent, again, thank you, Rishi, and the entire team Marksmen for coming up with this. I think it's really a service to the industry, and it's upon each one of us to take benefit from it. So that's the process, that's the framework, that's some of the outcomes. We'd love to see these indexes moving. We'd love to keep sharing more good practices. I'm sure each one of you who's participated have got a little bit of a report as well. If you want to know more or do more in that area, again, feel free to reach out to the team, Marksmen team here. But yeah, that's pretty much it from EY, and quite a privilege for us to be the knowledge and process partners for this. Thank you.